I'm just going to trust the Lord that, because I know we're not going to get through everything. I even knew last night as I was putting it together, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much information. But the cool thing is, I'm actually going to give you guys a text. You can text Signature Self to it, and you can actually, my coach and I put together my book and coaching program that goes along with this and has so much more than I can give you today in it for free. So it's just your name and email. Super easy. So, and we do all kinds of stuff. We do a practice of forgiveness first, time, money, all kinds of stuff in there. So you can actually get that totally free with the printables, more printables than what you have today. So, but they're all in that pretty, my signature colors. So there you go. All right, so just gonna calm down. I'm a little bit nervous. So like I said, it is harder to talk in front of people that you know. So with what I do, a lot of you may not know, I'm actually what I call a signature self specialist. And when women come to me, they're typically, they know a lot about themselves. They have life experience like a lot of you. And they really know what they like and dislike. They just know this kind of stuff. But there's something that's holding them back. That can be, I mean, it's all kinds of things. It's from maybe not understanding a piece of their personality, or it can be even the business that they're in isn't a right fit. I mean, it's all the spectrum is huge. So what I get to do is kind of help them figure out what that is. Like, what is it? Let's look at your strengths and your personality and your love languages and all that. Let's look at your finances, your time. Like, how are those? Because those will hold you back big time, especially finances. That's a big one. And actually time too. They're pretty equal. So what I find though is that I get to help women live in their full God-given purpose. So we're gonna dig in a little bit today. We will not get as deep as I would love to go with you guys, but we're totally gonna go through some of that. So what I found is, like, when we're little girls, we have these gigantic dreams, right? Like, I wanted to be an astronaut, or the first woman president. And I'd actually love to hear what some of your guys' little girl dreams were. In fact, I've got a worksheet for us. So what were some of your little girl dreams?
Princess.
Yes. And I forgot a Sharpie, so we're gonna do the best with this. Does someone have one? Hey, yes.
Feel free to use.
Thank you. I had it last night for making these, and I forgot to bring it upstairs, I think so. One way or another. Yes. Yes. Okay, so I'll just use the one. So yeah, princess. Yes, I love it.
Ballerina. Superstar.
Yes. Okay, I'm gonna write faster. Love it.
Singer.
Yes. Actually, I lived on a military base growing up, and we actually got to do something called Young Astronauts. I thought that was normal, but apparently it's not. But we actually got to go visit like a space camp, and we got to actually go watch one of the ships land. It was pretty cool. So anyways, I always thought an astronaut would be really cool. Awesome. So the sad thing is, they have found, and you guys have probably heard this before, but by the time we get to be about middle school, teenagers, they'll ask little kids like, ooh, who wants to be a singer, or who wants to be an actor, or whatever. And all the kids will raise their hand. But then we get to like middle school, high school, and that gets to be less and less until like we're adults, and it's kind of like, yeah, no, I don't think so. So we tend to get more shy about the stuff that we really want to do as we get older, which is actually pretty sad. But life does add up, right? So I'm going to tell you just a tiny bit of my story. 4 years ago, I was in a weight loss class, Weight Watchers, in fact. And I was listening to my gal, but not really, because I was really like kind of stewing in my head, like, how come I'm so excited while I'm here? And then I hit the door not even the parking lot, and I'm immediately just like, oh no, I'm not gonna do this. I'm like inside, I'm like, yes, yes. And then I hit the door and I'm like, Safeway's right next door, I'm gonna go get a pastry. I would just sabotage myself. And I realized that this was a pattern. I've done it in business. I've been a business owner of almost every MLM you can think of. And I love them. I've done all kinds of things. My weight was always an issue since I was like a teenager. Well, actually, since I got out of the military. Even relationships, I was sabotaging. And of course, I had just taken a position as the children's director at my church and realized that this was a pattern. I knew, and I had actually told my pastor, like, I'm really good at starting things, but I'm not very good at commitment. So I was like, this is going to be really hard. I'm going to do it, but it's going to be really hard. And I realized in that moment that I had been struggling with depression. I could look back and was like, wow, I really have been struggling with this for a really long time. I can look back and see the patterns. And I was pretty ignorant on what it was, very ignorant actually. In fact, I can remember a conversation with my poor mama, telling her, if you had your, faith right with God, you shouldn't be struggling with this. And she had told me that she was struggling with depression, which I, of course, have apologized for many times. But I just didn't know what it was. And Robin Williams' story actually hit me pretty hard because everybody on the outside was like, oh, he was always so happy. He's a comedian. He's funny. And I just seeing that was like, that's me. When I go out, I have the mask. I'm happy, and I actually am a pretty naturally outgoing person. I'm just really good at starting and not finishing. And it just honestly kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. And unfortunately, it was, I had just lived in it, and I didn't even know. And it wasn't until I had actually had suicidal thoughts that it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I finally went to my husband and was like, look, this is what's happening. And he was like, whoa, you need to get into a doctor, of course. And it really was just one of those things like, wait a minute, this is not me. I'm not someone who would ever think of suicide. I am not someone who would ever think of myself as down and depressed, but it was all on the outside. So it actually was shocking when I went into the doctor, and the questions that they had asked me also hit me like a ton of bricks, the normal questions they go through for you if you are struggling with depression. And I was just weeping because I just had no idea that this was such a pattern. I'd been ignoring it because I had little kids. You just push through, right? But it did make sense. Life had added up, which I've got. Let me just tear this right in the middle of this deep story. I like to call this my perfect pot of purpose-stealing stew. So it had added up. Childhood traumas. I had had sexual abuse when I was younger. Choices that I made from that were pretty crazy. I had a misidentity. I had comparison issues. Of course, life stages. Being busy, having little kids. I mean, let's face it, that is crazy, Not getting a lot of sleep from that, and not really. And I was a teenage mama, so I really didn't know what I was doing. I was a baby raising a baby. Even silly things like disorganization. I mean, I just felt like I was constantly in this hamster wheel and I just couldn't get out. Like, what do I do? My house is always a mess. I don't feel like we even function. And then some senses from unworthiness, shame, perfectionism. Oh, that was a big one for me. I wouldn't do things because, I don't really have time to do it this way. And that's the only way I want to do it. So not going to do it. So yeah, it created this beautiful pot of purpose-stealing stew. Can anyone relate to that? Yeah. So, Allie, I'm going to go ahead and do that video. Here's what I want to ask you. Do you truly know who you are? Now, I apologize, my voice is not great because I'm still getting over allergies and sickness, but I'm going to read a little piece for you. This was a huge movement for me in my heart. If you guys haven't read the book Captivating, so good. So good. Darkness over the deep, and God's breath hovering over the waters. The breathless moment in the dark before the first notes of a great symphony or concert, a play, or an epic film. All is formless, empty, dark. Then a voice speaks, "Let there be light." And suddenly, there is light. Pure light, magnificent light. Its radiance will enable us to see now what is unfolding. The voice speaks again and again. "Let there be a vault in the midst of the waters, and let it divide water from water. Let the waters under the heavens be gathered in one place, so that the dry land will appear." Creation in its early stages begins like any work of art, with uncut stone or a mass of clay, a rough sketch, a blank sheet of music. Formless and empty, as Genesis 1:2 has it. Then God begins to fashion the raw materials he has made, like an artist working with the stone or sketch or page before him. Light and dark, heaven and earth, land and sea. It's beginning to take shape. With passion and brilliance, the Creator works in large, sweeping movements on a grand scale. Great realms are distinguished from one another and established. Then he moves back over them again for a second pass as he begins to fill in color, detail, finer lines. Let the earth grow grass, plants, and trees bearing fruit. Let there be lights in the vault of the heavens. Let the waters swarm with the swarm of living creatures, and let fowl fly over the earth. Forest and meadow burst forth, tulips and pine trees and moss-covered stones. And notice, the masterpiece is becoming more and more intricate, more intimate. He fills the sky with 1,000 million stars, and he names them, sets them in constellations. Into our world, God opens his hand, and the animals spring forth. Myriads of birds in every shape and size and song take wing. Hawks, herons, pelicans. All the creatures of the sea leap into it. Whales, dolphins, fish of 1,000 colors and designs, horses, gazelles, buffalo thunder across the plains, running like the wind. It is more astonishing than we could possibly imagine. From water and stone to pomegranate and rose to leopard and nightingale, creation ascends in beauty. The plot is thickening, the symphony is building and swelling higher and higher to a crescendo. No wonder the morning stars sang together and all the angels shouted for joy. A great hurrah goes up from the heavens. The greatest of all masterpieces is emerging. What was once formless and empty is now overflowing with life and color and sound and movement in 1,000 variations. Most importantly, notice that each creature is more intricate and noble and mysterious than the last. A cricket is amazing, but it cannot compare to a wild horse. Then something truly astonishing takes place. God sets his own image on the earth. He creates a being like himself. He creates a son. The Lord formed the man from the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. It is nearing the end of the 6th day, the end of the Creator's great labor, as Adam steps forth, the image of God, the triumph of his work. He alone is pronounced the Son of God. Nothing in creation even comes close. Picture Michelangelo's David. He is magnificent. Truly, the masterpiece seems complete, and yet the master says that something is not good, not right. Something is missing, and that something is Eve. And the Lord cast a deep slumber on the human, and he slept, and he took one of his ribs and closed over the flesh where it had been. And the Lord God built the rib he had taken from the human into a woman, and he brought her to the human. She is the crescendo, the final, astonishing work of God, woman. In one last flourish, creation comes to a finish, not with Adam, but with Eve. Do you truly know who you are? You are God's crescendo. It was not finished without you. Love that. Good book. So, bless you. Perfect way to end that. I love it. So from there, God took me on a self-love journey that lasted a good amount of time. It's been a 4-year journey, but I can actually see where he was even working on me before that. And I started to seek out help. I needed a team. I couldn't do it by myself. And he also gave me some really cool specific prayer, because I was kind of in this place of like, God, I believe in you. I have faith in you. But there's a lot of things I wish that I had. I really wanted to see God as my dad. And I have, between my stepdad and my dad was actually my real dad, was in prison for 14 years of my life. And so I started praying so specifically, like, Lord, show me you as my dad. I need some major dad issues resolved here. And he did. He actually, it was really beautiful. My dad had actually just gotten out of prison. And between him and my stepdad and my husband being a dad, he gave me what I called glimpses of God. And just some beautiful things that he provided for me, and some healing that he did with those specific situations. I went to my pastor and his wife and a counselor, and we did some really good healing on my inner child, healing some past things. And then I have accountability partners that I still meet with to this day. And I did get on medication. That was something I was like, I was ignorant, but I was like, I'm never getting on medication. I still am someone who prefers an alternate, a healthy or a natural alternative, but I actually realize now sometimes there's a time for that. So I've learned a lot. I've become a little less judgmental in my life, and just kind of understanding a little bit better, like what things are. So I didn't have a worksheet for this, but I do want you guys to think through a little bit, who can be on your team and what tools can help you. That book was a huge tool for me, just helping me to understand like how much God really loves me, and a lot of other tools that I'm going to show you guys throughout. So let's see, we're okay on time. Let's see, I want to make sure we get some things done. So we're going to do some work. I'm going to have you guys pull out the negative thoughts page, which sometimes in order to get to the good, we've got to look at some of the bad, right? So I apologize again, it's not in total order. And you're going to need your phone. Today you're going to definitely need your phone if you have it. And if you happen to have a picture of a little girl, it can be you, it can be your daughter or a niece, or maybe even just a little girl that you love. If you can get that out, and have it handy. You don't have to have it right this very second. But we're going to take a minute, and I promise I'm not going to leave you in this. As long as we have time, okay, we should be good. But I really want you to think about some of the negative thoughts that you tell yourself. Maybe you're about to do something big, and what are the negative thoughts that come out? Heck, maybe you're just going to go visit somebody, take your kids to the park, right? What are the negative thoughts that come? Now, please don't feel obligated to share these. I'll share mine, but if you wish to share, please feel free. Some of mine, which were hugely attached to my inner child issues from abuse and the actions that took place for me after that, some of the decisions that I made as a kid. But unworthiness, you're not good enough, was a big one. As a pregnant teenager, I always had a chip on my shoulder, like I'm going to have the perfect husband or perfect marriage, perfect kids, perfect everything. And so I always felt like I've got to prove myself. And that may not seem like a negative thought, but whenever I was in a leadership meeting or even just amongst friends, I always felt like the little girl in the room, like I was the least worthy of everybody. As a teacher, I was going through this as a teacher. So even I was even a trainer of the teachers, but yet I would feel like, who am I to be training teachers? Like, I'm not good enough for this. But I felt like I had to prove myself, so I wore a pretty strong mask. Not good enough. I have to prove myself. Oh, I'm sure there's plenty more. I don't want to spend too much time on that. If anybody would like to share, please feel free, but don't feel like you have to. I just want to give you a minute to write some of those down. And if you would, if you're done writing, get out that picture that I just talked about. Little girl, someone you love. I should have brought my own picture. And I really would like you to take a moment and look at that little girl. And here's the question I want you to ask. Would you say these things to her? Oh. Would you tell yourself as an 8-year-old with those big dreams, you're not good enough? You got to prove yourself. You're not worthy. You're not loved. Nobody cares. People aren't calling you, so they must not like you. What hit me the hardest was when my daughter started struggling with these same things. She would come home and say, my friends didn't invite me to this thing. We went to a small school, so it really was kind of devastating. And just having to walk through that with her, like, honey, I know they love you. They just invited their 3 closest friends. Yes, you're in a class of 6, but it has nothing to do with them not loving you. And then, of course, I'd talk to that mom the next day and be like, what the heck is wrong with you? But it was really tough. I don't want to leave you here. What God started showing me is his truths about me. That book really helped. My accountability partners really helped. My pastor and his wife really helped. So you'll see on the back of that page, I want you to tear that up and burn it.
Let's not do it in the building.
Not today. We won't do that right now. But not because they're going to go away if you do that. It's not going to happen. But sometimes we actually need the altar. Remember, God always had the Israelites build an altar so that they would remember. And God, I can see very clearly, had me build altars in several places in my life so that I could say, in fact, when I did my healing with my little girl, it was a beautiful picture. I will try to share it kind of quickly, but I was doing a mind, I don't even know what they call it, but my pastor is having me picture a happy place in one of the places I had abuse. So in my home in California where I lived on base, we had a park in the back and it connected several communities. It was really cool. We were a very small community. It was a really neat place to live as a kid. And so we had this park that the neighborhood built, and there were several ways that you could go to school. And we walked to school, of course. And through one of the paths, he said, okay, I want you to see Jesus. I want you to see him coming from somewhere. And he came from one of the paths that I used to walk to school in. And he came. I was playing on the playground, playing probably one of my, I'm an astronaut or a princess or whatever we were playing. And I watched myself see him, and I ran up to him. And Jesus picked me up and spun me around like you do with a little girl, right? Who's so excited to see you, like an uncle or a dad. And there weren't any words, but I grabbed his hand and we walked off, and I got to see that. And my pastor said, that's Jesus saying, the little girl's not needed anymore. The little girl would show up in meetings. I would feel like I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough. I'm a kid. In fact, even as a married woman, I still felt like a kid. I felt like I shouldn't be doing these things. I'm a kid. Like, it was very weird, a very weird mind thing. But what he showed me was, now when she shows up, you can say, nope, you're not needed. So burning this page is like that. It's not that they're not going to show up, but you can say, nope, I burned you. I don't need you. That's not true. And instead, I want you to get your Post-it notes. Let's write some truths. I think you have a page there, so it should say, I believe it has Post-it notes for truths. Yeah. Go ahead and typically when you buy my book from me, you actually have this already filled with Post-it notes, and you're supposed to take them and put them around your house. But how about we fill them out and you can put them on the page and figure out where you want to put them. So that way you don't have to carry another thing. But this one I would love your guys' interaction on. What are some truths? For me, God is my dad. Therefore, I'm royalty. I try to live in that as much as I can. Not always easy, but I try. How about anybody else? There's some truths that you can say instead of your negatives.
I am loved.
Yes. I should have done that in caps.
I'm made for so much more.
Mm-hmm.
Forgiven.
Yes. That was one of my favorites. Again, probably caps. One I had to tell my daughter about with her friends was, your friends do love you. You gotta trust that. Until they tell you otherwise, they're your friends. Any others? I don't want to miss anybody, just in case.
I was created for a purpose.
Yes. Oh, love it. Purpose. Okay, I'm not going to make the same mistake and not do this in caps. There we go. All of those should be in caps. Yeah.
Chosen.
Chosen, yes. Love that song. I'm not in a sea of a million faces. He chose me. Awesome. I don't have any more space, so I guess we'll stop there. So I really want you ladies to live in this. And so part of the reason I even put this book together was because what I realized was I was doing all these cool things. I was doing strength finders tests, personality tests. I was doing all this healing, and man, I was having these cool glimpses of God, and I was like, I just need a place to corral all of this and maybe like dig deeper. So that was why I put it up. Have you guys heard of the app Think Up? Has anybody heard of that app? Okay, so what I would love if you took some time, Think Up, I'll write it up here. Think Up. It's a free app. And what you can do is you can put these truths, you can record them, and it'll play it back to you with music, which is kind of cool. So you hear your own voice saying these things over and over again, and you can put it on repeat, so it'll just keep saying these things to you. I always think of that funny, I think it was it Saturday Night Live? I can't remember, but it was the guy who did the daily affirmations. You guys remember that guy? Yeah. I was telling my girlfriend, I was like, oh yeah, I've got these daily affirmations, and she was like, you mean like the guy on Saturday Night Live? And I was like, no, but kinda. Doggone it, people like me. But I love that Cantor actually kind of already said this today with the armor. Imagine what we could accomplish if we lived in these truths on a regular basis. I cannot tell you all the things that all these negative thoughts used to hold me back from. Even just silly things like making dinner. For goodness sakes. Even just regular stuff. So I've got a coloring page for you guys. Not to brag, but I drew it for you.
Nice.
Can I give that to you, Christy?
Yeah.
No, but this is the verse that God gave me. I paraphrased it because I only had so much space. But actually, this is the stuff that spoke to me anyways. Galatians 6:1, 4 and 5 in the Message. And like I said, this is paraphrased. But it says, live creatively, friends. Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you have been given. And then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourself with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can with your own life. So that for me, because I kind of felt like, man, am I just being selfish with all this like self-exploration? I struggled with the thought of, but shouldn't I just be doing like Jesus exploration? Or, it felt a little weird to me to self-exploration, felt a little bit vain. But when I saw that verse, I realized, no, it's actually a command that I need to follow in figuring out who the heck I am. Who did God make me to be? And I always felt like I kind of did things differently and kind of weirdly from everybody else. And so it was really just one of those things that God was like, no, it's okay. You can be the one that brings your special mug to everything. You can be the one that has your special pen, or, even just silly, those are silly things, but it goes so much deeper. Like, you don't have to worry about, if everybody says this is the latest craze for losing weight, it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. Or this, if you do things wrong in that way. There were so many things I just was like, and it's layers upon layers upon layers of like, even at one point, I was pretty stagnant in my faith, and I felt really bad because the only thing I was doing was reading the verse of the day. And yet I found God gave me so much out of those single verses. And it was another way of him showing, it's okay. It's all right. Yeah, you're not doing the whole, I forget, is it soup? Scripture, observation. The life journals. We had the life journals at our church, and I think it was like scripture, observation, maybe it was SOAP. I can't remember what the acronym was, but it was just a beautiful thing because I didn't feel that pressure of like, oh, I'm doing this wrong. Even prayer, I used to feel like I had no idea how to pray. And I'd read the prayer of Jabez, and then there was a time when everybody was, on the Lord's Prayer, and I just felt like, gosh, Lord, I just don't feel like I know what I'm doing. And then you would say my prayers, and they just felt so like, I didn't really use churchy words, and I didn't really, like sometimes, especially when I was angry and going through tough stuff, I used some pretty colorful language in it, but he really showed me that he can handle it. It's okay. He wants to hear that raw heart. So I want to start you guys on this signature self journey. So for me, that's what this scripture is all about. Let's figure out who you are. Let's not compare to anybody else, and dig yourself into that. So on there, you guys will, once you sign up, I've already actually got it going, so you'll immediately get my practice on forgiveness. We're going to go through money and time, and lots of other stuff. So, all right, we're not going to get through the rest of these workables, but I wanted to give them to you because I know in here we do the love languages assessment. But I'm just going to walk you through what you have there so that you guys can have that, because I want to get to the last thing that I have for you because I actually think it's the most important. But so it's just fun to learn these things. And listen, these aren't to put you in a box. Obviously, they can only do so much. But I found the more that I started to learn about myself, the more I started giving myself permission to be that. Because some of these things that were speaking into me, like on that personality type, I'm the protagonist. I can't tell you everything about it, but it is basically a leader. On the flag one, I was a leader, like all these things. Like I've always known I was a leader, but I kind of also fought it. Like, but everywhere I go, even when I was younger and didn't know this stuff about myself, I'd open my mouth, like in the military, I'd open up my mouth, and then all of a sudden I'm a squad leader, and I'm like, oh, I didn't mean to say that, but I just couldn't help it. It's just who I was. So finally giving myself that permission, but also learning I actually am a starter. I'm really good at starting things, not so good at finishing. That's just who I am. Like, oh, okay. So I know this of people, and I'm an idea person. Oh my gosh. I used to weep and ask the Lord, why do you give me all these ideas and they're clearly not for me? I'd try to do every single one of them because I was like, oh, God gave me this great idea. Oh, I need to do it. It wasn't for me. And now with what I do, being a coach, I get to give those ideas out. Like, oh, well, here's a cool idea for you. You know, oh, you want to do that? Awesome. Let's try this. That's what I do now. Yes. So I have somewhere to put all those crazy ideas that I've written out for like years and years and years and have journals of. But that's what that helped, was for me to help finally kind of like, oh, okay, I don't mind being bold and sticking out. I'm actually pretty cool with that. Okay. I have one activity. I'm hoping we can do that. And then I have this cool signature self-constitution for you guys that I want to get to you. So we're going to skip everything else. You'll see the other pages there. Things that bring me joy, ways to care for myself. That's for the self-care stuff that we've talked about. If you want help or need any ideas for those, let me know. I have a lot. But here's what I'm going to say before we do these, because I know I'm not going to pull you guys back once we do this activity. Cultivating and nurturing your self-love journey takes time. I don't feel like I have 100% figured out, and I've been working on this for a very long time. But when you give yourself permission to be the high-end woman, because that's what this captivating book says to me. I'm high-end, I'm royalty, I'm God's daughter, right? The high-end woman that you are, you will be able to live in your full God-given purpose unapologetically.